The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Commander Park Do-hun stepped onto the crystal floors of the Valari throne world. The air was different here. It smelled like metal and flowers mixed together. The light came from everywhere and nowhere, making the whole palace glow like it was alive. Do-hun walked forward with steady steps. His boots made small clicking sounds on the floor. Behind him, Lieutenant Yunhana followed closely, her hand resting near her belt where her translator device hung. The Valari were waiting for them. They were tall creatures, much taller than humans. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that shined like precious gems. Blues, greens, and purples moved across their skin in slow waves. They had 4 arms each, and their faces had large eyes that looked like broken mirrors, showing many images at once. Do-hun felt their eyes on him immediately. He knew what they were looking at. The left side of his face carried deep scars. They started near his eye and ran down like rivers carved into stone, ending at his jaw. The skin there was rough and uneven, pale against his darker complexion. His right hand was not flesh at all. It was metal, chrome fingers that moved smoothly, but looked nothing like a real hand. The whispers started before he had taken 10 steps. The Valari spoke in clicks and hums that his translator picked up easily. They thought he could not understand them. They were wrong. "Look at this one," a tall Valari said to another. "The humans send us damaged goods. His face is ruined. Can they not fix such things? Perhaps this is the best they have. A dying species sending their broken warriors. It is insulting. The Queen will not be pleased." Do-hun kept walking. His expression did not change. He had heard worse things before. Words were just sounds. They could not hurt him anymore. Hannah's jaw tightened beside him. She was young, only 26, but she had served under Do-hun for 3 years. She knew him well enough to stay quiet, but her anger was clear in the way she walked. The throne room opened before them like a flower made of glass and light. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually drifted near the top. Pillars of crystal held everything up, and between them stood hundreds of Valari nobles. All watching, all judging. At the far end sat Queen Nisara. She was the largest Valari Do-hun had ever seen. 8 feet tall at least. Her shell was darker than the others, almost black, but it was covered in patterns that glowed with soft light. The patterns moved and changed as she breathed, showing colors that had no names in human language. Her throne was made of something that looked like frozen shadow. She sat upon it like she had grown from it, like she and the throne were one being. Do-hun stopped at the proper distance and bowed. Not too deep, not too shallow. He was a representative of Earth, not a servant. "Queen Nisara," he said, his voice calm and clear. "I am Commander Park Do-hun of the United Earth Forces. I bring greetings from Earth and hope for successful negotiations regarding the Kethrani border treaty." The Queen studied him. Her many eyes reflected his image back at him dozens of times. He could see his own scars multiplied in her gaze. "Commander," she said. Her voice was deep and musical, filling the room without effort. "Earth sends an interesting choice for such important talks." "Interesting, Your Majesty? My advisors have noticed your condition." She gestured with one of her 4 hands toward his face. "Among the Valari, we do not display damage so openly. When our shells crack, we molt. We shed the broken parts and grow new ones. It is the natural way of superior beings." Do-hun nodded slowly. "Humans are different, Your Majesty. We cannot molt, clearly." A small ripple of amusement passed through the watching crowd. "So you simply keep your damage? You walk around showing everyone your failures?" "I would not call them failures, Your Majesty." "Then, what would you call them, scarred one?" Do-hun met her gaze directly. In the corner of his eye, he saw Hannah stiffen. Looking directly at the Queen was considered bold, almost rude. But Do-hun did not look away. Proof, he said simply. Proof of what? That I am still here. The room went quiet. The whispers stopped. Even the glowing patterns on the nobles seemed to pause for a moment. Queen Nisara leaned forward on her throne. Her own patterns shifted to a deep blue color that Dohan did not recognize. You are either very brave or very foolish, Commander. I have been called both, Your Majesty. Sometimes in the same sentence. Something changed in the Queen's face. It was subtle, just a small tilt of her head, a slight movement of her mandibles. But Dohan caught it. She was interested now. Before, he had been just another human. Now he was something else. Very well, she said. The negotiations will begin tomorrow. My servants will show you to your quarters. I trust they will be adequate for beings of your resilience. The word was spoken with a strange tone. Dohan could not tell if it was mockery or something else. He bowed again. Thank you, Your Majesty. As they walked away, escorted by 4 Velari guards, Hana moved closer to him. Sir, she whispered, they were mocking you. The whole time. Should I file a formal complaint? This behavior toward a diplomatic representative is no complaints, Dohan said quietly. But sir, Lieutenant. He stopped walking for just a moment, and she stopped with him. Let them mock. Let them whisper. Let them think whatever they want to think. Why? Dohan looked at his chrome hand, flexing the fingers slowly. The metal caught the strange light of the palace and threw it back in sharp angles. Because people who think they have already won are not paying attention. And people who are not paying attention make mistakes. Hannah was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. Understood, sir. They continued walking. The guards led them through long hallways filled with art and light. Everything was beautiful. Everything was perfect. The Velari had built a world where nothing was broken, nothing was scarred, nothing was less than ideal. Dohan found it exhausting. Their quarters were large and well furnished. The bed was too soft, clearly designed for beings with shells rather than skin. The food provided was strange but edible. The windows looked out over a city that glowed in the eternal twilight of the Velari homeworld. Hannah checked the room for listening devices. She found 7. She disabled none of them. Better to let the Velari think they were hearing everything. Tomorrow will be difficult, she said. Yes, they don't respect us. They don't respect Earth. They think we're weak because we break. Dohan stood at the window, watching the alien city pulse with light. Somewhere out there, thousands of Velari were going about their lives, never knowing what it felt like to carry a scar, never understanding what it meant to be marked by survival. Hannah, he said softly, do you know why I kept these scars? Why I never had them removed? She shook her head. You never told me, sir. Because every time I look in the mirror, I remember. He touched the rough skin of his face with his flesh hand. I remember what I lost. I remember what I saved. And I remember that no matter how bad things get, I can survive. I have the proof right here on my face. Hana was silent. Tomorrow they will mock us again, Dohan continued. They will delay. They will play games. They will try to make us feel small. But I have faced worse than rude words and superior attitudes. So have you. So has every human who ever lived. He turned from the window and looked at his young lieutenant. We break, Hana. That is true. But we do not stay broken. And that is something the Velari have never had to learn. Outside, the twin moons of the Velari homeworld rose slowly into the purple sky. Inside, a scarred commander prepared for a battle that would be fought with words. Instead of weapons, he had won such battles before. He would win this one too. The negotiations began exactly at dawn, when the first sun of the Velari system touched the crystal spires of the palace. Dohan arrived 10 minutes early. The Valari delegates arrived 30 minutes late. It was a small insult, but an obvious one. High Counselor Vexus led the Valari negotiating team. He was older than the others, his shell darker and thicker with age. His patterns moved slowly, showing deep greens and muddy yellows that Dohan had learned indicated contempt. "Commander," Vexus said as he took his seat at the long table, "I hope you rested well. These talks may take some time, longer than your species usually has patience for." "I have plenty of patience, Counselor. Do you?" Vexus clicked his mandibles together in what might have been a smile. "Interesting. Most humans I've met are quick creatures. Quick to anger, quick to act, quick to die." The other Valari delegates made soft sound of amusement. Dohan simply opened his folder of documents. "Shall we begin?" The first day was exactly as Hana had predicted. The Valari questioned every word of the treaty. They demanded explanations for simple terms. They pretended to misunderstand basic concepts. They called for breaks every hour to consult with each other in private. It was theater. Dohan understood that. They wanted to frustrate him. They wanted him to lose his temper, to make a mistake, to show the weakness they believed all humans carried. He gave them nothing. During the third break of the day, Vexus approached him in the hallway outside the negotiation chamber. "Tell me." "Commander," the counselor said, his voice dripping with false friendliness, "how did a creature in your condition rise to such a position? On Valari Prime, one so damaged would never be allowed to represent the state. It would be seen as an embarrassment." Dohan looked at the tall alien calmly. "Earth has different values, clearly." Vexus stepped closer, looking down at Dohan from his greater height. "I have studied humans. Fascinating creatures. You grow attached to each other. You form bonds. You feel pain when others of your kind suffer." He tilted his head. "Does it not pain your people to look at you? No? Not even the younglings? Human children do not run from your face?" Dohan felt something cold move through his chest, but he kept his expression neutral. "Children are often braver than adults, Counselor. They see a face and ask questions. They do not assume. They do not mock." Vexus made a clicking sound that the translator rendered as laughter. "How touching! The broken soldier finds comfort in the innocence of children." He leaned even closer. "On Valari Prime, we would have given you mercy. A quick death. It is what we do for creatures too damaged to serve properly. I serve just fine. Do you? With one hand of metal and a face that looks like it lost a fight with a plasma cutter?" Vexus straightened up. "I wonder, Commander, do you ever wish they had let you die? Surely existing in such a state must be exhausting." Dohan was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, he could hear Hana's breathing quicken with anger. He held up his flesh hand slightly, a signal for her to stay calm. "Counselor Vexus," Dohan said slowly, "I've met beings like you before. Not Valari, but similar. Beings who believe that perfection is the only measure of worth. Beings who think that damage equals weakness. And what happened to these beings? They learned otherwise." Dohan's voice did not rise, but something in it changed. Something harder. Usually too late. For just a moment, Vexus's patterns flickered with an orange color. Dohan had studied enough Valari culture to know that orange meant uncertainty. Fear, perhaps. Then the moment passed, and Vexus clicked his mandibles again. "We shall see, Commander. We shall see." The negotiations continued for 3 more days. Each day brought new delays, new insults, new attempts to break Dohan's composure. The Valari delegates made comments about human weakness, human ugliness, human mortality. They compared humans to the lesser species of the galaxy, the ones who had risen briefly and then faded into extinction. Dohan answered every insult with patience. He responded to every delay with calm. He met every attempt to anger him with nothing but professional politeness. It was driving the Valari mad. On the fourth night, Hannah found him on the balcony of their quarters. He was standing in the cold air, looking up at the unfamiliar stars. "Sir," she said, "you should rest. Tomorrow is the final session before the Queen makes her decision. I know. They're going to reject the treaty. You know that, right? They've been playing games this whole time. They never intended to agree." Dohan nodded slowly. "Probably. Then why are we still here? Why are you letting them treat you like this?" He turned to look at her. In the starlight, his scars looked deeper, the shadows filling the valleys of damaged tissue. "Hannah, do you know what the Valari fear most?" She shook her head. "They fear things they cannot understand. Things that do not fit their perfect world." He gestured to his face. "To them, I am a puzzle. A creature who should be weak, but does not act weak. A being who carries visible damage, but does not hide from it. They mock me because they do not know what else to do. So you're confusing them? I'm showing them something they have never seen before." He looked back at the stars. Patience, endurance, the ability to take pain and keep going. These are not traits the Valari value. They molt when they are damaged. They shed their problems and grow new shells. They have never had to learn how to carry weight. Hannah moved to stand beside him. "My father talked about you sometimes. Before he died, he said you were the strongest person he ever knew." Dawn was quiet. "He said that when you crashed your ship into the enemy fleet, you were smiling. Is that true?" "No." Dawn's voice was soft. "I was screaming. I was terrified. I was certain I was going to die, and I did not want to die. But I did it anyway, because the alternative was worse." "What was the alternative?" "Watching 30,000 innocent people burn while I did nothing." They stood in silence for a long moment. The wind from the alien world moved around them, carrying scents of flowers that did not exist on Earth. "Sir," Hannah said finally, "what do we do if they reject the treaty?" "We go home. We report to command. We prepare for the possibility that the Valari Dominion may become an enemy instead of an ally. And your scars? All the mockery you endured here. Will it mean nothing?" Dohan flexed his chrome hand, watching the starlight play across the metal joints. "No," he said. "It will mean something. It always means something. Even if we fail tomorrow, we will have shown them that humans do not break easily. We will have planted a seed of doubt in their perfect minds. And seeds, Hannah, have a way of growing into things that cannot be ignored." He turned and walked back inside, leaving her alone with the stars. Hannah stayed on the balcony for a while longer. She thought about her father, about the stories he had told her, about the day he went out in an escape pod to search for a commander who should have been dead, but refused to die. Tomorrow would come, and with it, the Queen's decision. But tonight, Hannah understood something new about the man she served. Park Dawn was not just a soldier with scars. He was a message written in flesh and metal. A message that the Valari were only beginning to read. And when they finally understood what that message said, everything would change. Queen Nasara had ruled for 300 cycles. She had watched stars die and empires crumble. She had seen species rise from nothing and fall back into dust. She had survived 17 assassination attempts, 2 civil wars, and the Great Plague that had killed half her planet. Very little surprised her anymore. But the human commander puzzled her, alone in her private chamber, surrounded by screens that showed recordings from the negotiation room. Nasara watched Park Dawn for the 100th time. She studied the way he moved, the way he spoke, the way his scarred face remained calm no matter what insults were thrown at him. Interesting, she murmured to herself. Her guards had reported everything to her. How Vexus had mocked the human openly. How the delegates had laughed at his damaged appearance. How they had done everything possible to break his spirit and make him show weakness. The human had given them nothing. Desara called up medical files on her screen. She had asked her physicians to analyze the human's visible injuries, to tell her what kind of damage could create such scars. The report was disturbing. Plasma burns. 3rd and 4th degree, she read aloud. Structural damage to the orbital socket. Nerve damage consistent with extreme heat exposure. Loss of original limb due to crushing force, replaced with mechanical prosthetic. She looked at the frozen image of Dohan on her screen. These injuries should have killed him, she said. Multiple times over. How is he still functioning? There was no one to answer her. The chamber was empty. Desara preferred it that way when she was thinking. She knew what her counselors believed. They thought humans were weak creatures, fragile bags of fluid and bone that broke easily and died quickly. They thought this scarred commander was proof of human inferiority, a broken thing sent because Earth had nothing better to offer. Desara was not so sure. She had studied humans for decades. She knew their history, their wars, their strange habit of fighting each other as much as they fought external enemies. They were a contradictory species, capable of great cruelty and great kindness, able to build beautiful things and then burn them down. But one thing stood out in every report she had ever read about: humanity. They did not quit. Other species gave up when facing impossible odds. They calculated the probabilities, recognized defeat, and surrendered. It was logical. It was sensible. It was what any intelligent being would do. Humans did not do this. They fought when they should have fled. They endured when they should have collapsed. They survived when every calculation said they should be dead. And here, in her palace, sat a human who embodied this trait more than any she had ever encountered. Desara made a decision. She summoned a guard and gave instructions. Then she waited. An hour later, Commander Park Dawn was escorted into her private chamber. He walked with the same steady steps she had seen in the recordings, showing no nervousness despite the unusual summons. "Leave us," Desara commanded her guards. They hesitated. No guard had ever been ordered to leave the Queen alone with an alien before. It was against every protocol. "I said leave us." They obeyed, though their patterns showed deep orange worry as they departed. Desara descended from her raised platform, bringing herself closer to the human's level. She was still much taller than him, but the gesture was intentional. She wanted him to understand that this was not a formal audience. "Commander," she said, "do you know why I asked you here?" "No, Your Majesty. My counselors believe you are weak. They see your scars and think you are broken. They mock you because they do not understand you." She began to circle him slowly, her forearms folded behind her back. "I have ruled for 300 cycles. I have learned to see things that others miss. And I see something in you that confuses me." "What do you see, Your Majesty?" Desara stopped in front of him, looking down into his scarred face. "I see a predator," she said. "Wounded, yes. Marked by old battles, yes. But still dangerous. Perhaps more dangerous because of those marks, not less." Dalhan said nothing, but something flickered in his single organic eye. Recognition, perhaps, understanding. "My physicians analyzed your injuries," Desara continued. "They tell me you should be dead. The damage to your face alone should have killed you. The loss of your hand would have sent most humans into shock. Yet here you stand, representing your entire species in negotiations that could determine the future of this region of space. Humans are resilient, Your Majesty. Resilient." Desara tested the word. An interesting way to describe the refusal to die when death is the logical outcome. She leaned closer. "Tell me, Commander, how did you survive?" "I had reasons to live. That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters." Desara's patterns shifted to deep violet. the color of serious contemplation. This human was more complex than she had expected. He spoke simply, but his words carried weight. "Tomorrow, the negotiations will end," she said. "My counselors will recommend that I reject the treaty. They do not believe humanity is worth allying with. They think your species is dying, fading, too weak to be useful partners. And what do you think, Your Majesty?" It was a bold question. On Valari Prime, one did not ask the Queen her opinion so directly. But the Zara found she did not mind. This human had earned the right to boldness. "I think," she said slowly, "that I do not have enough information. I think that judging a species by one man's scars is foolish. And I think that you are hiding something. Something important." "Hiding, Your Majesty?" "Those scars tell a story. I want to hear it." The Zara moved back to her platform, but did not sit on her throne. Instead, she stood at the edge, looking down at him. "Tomorrow, before the final session, you will come here again. You will tell me exactly how you received those wounds. All of it. No diplomacy, no careful words. Just the truth. And if I refuse, then I will let my counselors have their way, and the treaty will die." Dohan was quiet for a long moment. The Zara watched him thinking, watched the subtle movements of his scarred face as he weighed his options. "Your Majesty," he said finally, "the story of these scars is not pleasant. It involves death, pain, choices that still haunt me. Are you sure you want to hear it?" "Commander, I have lived for 300 cycles. I have ordered executions. I have watched my own children die in political struggles. I have made decisions that killed millions so the billions might live. Whatever story you have, I can handle it." Dohan nodded slowly. "Very well. Tomorrow, you will hear the truth." "Good." The Zara's patterns shifted to a lighter color, something like satisfaction. "You are dismissed, Commander. Rest well. Tomorrow will determine many things." Dohan bowed and turned to leave. At the door, he paused and looked back. "Your Majesty," he said, "may I ask you something?" "You may ask." "I may not answer. Why do you want to know? Why does my story matter to you?" The Zara considered the question. It was a fair one. "Because," she said finally, "I have met thousands of beings from hundreds of species. Diplomats, warriors, kings, and beggars. Most of them are easy to understand. Their motives are simple, their stories predictable." She looked at his scarred face. "But you, Commander Park Dohan, are a mystery. And I have learned that mysteries, left unsolved, have a way of becoming either great allies or great enemies. I prefer to know which one you will be." Dohan smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible on his damaged face, but it was real. "Then I will see you tomorrow, Your Majesty, and you will have your answer." He left, and the doors closed behind him. The Zara stood alone in her chamber, thinking about the strange human and his hidden story. Tomorrow, she would learn the truth, and something told her that truth would change everything. The private chamber was quiet when Dohan entered. No guards stood at the walls. No servants waited in the corners. Even the ever-present hum of Valari technology seemed muted, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Queen Zara sat on a simple chair instead of her throne. She had removed most of her ceremonial decorations, leaving only her natural shell with its slowly moving patterns. She looked almost ordinary like this. Almost approachable. Almost. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her. Dohan sat. The chair was too large for a human, designed for Valari bodies, but he made no complaint. "I have kept my promise, Your Majesty. I am here to tell you the truth, then begin." Dohan was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Outside the window, the eternal twilight of the Valari homeworld painted everything in shades of purple and gold. 12 years ago, he said, Earth was at war with itself. The unification conflicts. Perhaps you know of them. The Zara nodded. A civil war. Your species fighting over resources and ideology. We considered it evidence of human weakness. A species that cannot even unite itself is hardly a threat to others. That is what most aliens believed. Dahan's voice remained calm, but something harder crept into it. They were wrong. That war did not make us weaker. It made us harder. It taught us lessons that peaceful species never learn. What kind of lessons? How to fight when everything is against you. How to survive when survival should be impossible. How to keep going when giving up would be easier. The Zara leaned forward slightly. Continue. I was a captain then. Young for the rank, but war makes careers move fast. I commanded a patrol ship called the Starling. Small vessel, light weapons, designed for scouting and reconnaissance. Nothing special. He paused. We were stationed at Colony 7, an agricultural world. No strategic value at all. Just farms, families, children. His chrome hand rested on his knee, fingers still. The enemy fleet arrived without warning. 17 warships against our single patrol vessel. We had no chance in a direct fight. No chance at all. So you fled? No. Doan shook his head. We could not flee. Colony 7 had 30,000 civilians. Farmers, teachers, doctors, shopkeepers. People who had nothing to do with the war. They were targets simply because they lived in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Zara's patterns shifted to a deep blue. The enemy intended to kill them? They intended to make an example. Destroy the colony. Broadcast the footage. Break the spirit of our side. War is not always about military targets, Your Majesty. Sometimes it is about fear. Sometimes it is about proving you are willing to do things your enemy is not. I understand. We have done similar things in our own wars. Dawn nodded. Command ordered an evacuation. Transport ships were coming, but they were hours away. The enemy fleet was already in orbit. They began bombing the evacuation site almost immediately. He stopped speaking for a moment. His organic eye seemed to look past the walls of the chamber, seeing something far away. The fires started first. Then the screams. I was on the bridge of the Starling, watching through our sensors as transport after transport was hit. Children were on those ships, Your Majesty. Families who had done nothing wrong except exist. What did you do? I ordered my crew to engage the enemy fleet. Full attack. Every weapon we had. The Zara's patterns flickered with orange. Against 17 warships? That is suicide. Yes, it was. Dahan's voice was flat now, empty of emotion. We lasted 4 minutes. The Starling was hit by 3 plasma torpedoes. The bridge was destroyed. Most of my command crew died instantly. I was thrown against a support beam. Half my face was burned away by plasma fire. My hand was crushed under falling metal. He lifted his chrome hand, looking at it like he was seeing it for the first time. I remember the pain. I remember the smell of my own burning flesh. I remember thinking that this was the end, that I was going to die in the wreckage of my ship, while 30,000 people burned on the planet below. But you did not die. No, I did not die. Something hard entered his voice now. Something that made even a 300-cycle queen pay closer attention. I crawled through the wreckage. One hand was useless, crushed beyond repair. Half my face was gone, but the engineering section was still intact. The engines were still working. You could have escaped. I could have escaped. Dahan met her eyes directly. But if I escaped, the enemy fleet would continue bombing the evacuation. Thousands would die. Children would die. And I would spend the rest of my life knowing I had run away while innocent people burned. The Zara was very still. Her patterns had gone pale, almost white. "What did you do, Commander?" "I ordered my surviving crew to abandon ship. 14 people were still alive. I told them to take the escape pods and get as far away as possible." He paused. "Then I piloted what was left of the Starling directly into the enemy command vessel. The silence in the chamber was absolute. I used my ship as a weapon," Do-hung continued. "The Starling was small, but it was moving at full speed. When it hit the command vessel, the impact killed their admiral instantly. The explosion crippled their entire fleet's communication network. Suddenly, 17 warships had no central coordination. They had no orders. They did not know what to do. And the evacuation? The confusion lasted 47 minutes. Long enough for the transport ships to arrive. Long enough to load 23,000 civilians and escape to safety." Do-hung's voice softened slightly. 7,000 people died that day. 7,000 who could not be saved in time. But 23,000 lived. 23,000 people are still alive today because the enemy fleet fell into chaos for less than an hour. Desara spoke slowly. "And you? How did you survive the collision?" "I should not have survived. The impact should have killed me instantly. But somehow, a section of the hull held together. Somehow, I was thrown clear of the main explosion. Somehow, I ended up floating in a piece of wreckage no bigger than this room. Somehow," Desara repeated. "My crew had disobeyed my order. Instead of fleeing, they had stayed in their escape pods, searching for survivors. They found me 3 days later, more dead than alive. They dragged me into their pod and kept me breathing until rescue ships arrived." His voice dropped. "Lieutenant Hana's father was one of them. He gave me his own oxygen supply when mine ran out. He died so I could live." The chamber was silent. Desara rose from her chair and walked to the window. Her patterns moved in colors Do-hung had never seen before. Complex combinations that shifted faster than he could track. "Why did you never heal these scars?" she asked finally, her back still turned to him. "Human medicine is advanced enough. You could have a new face, a flesh hand. You could erase every mark of that day." Do-hung stood as well, though he remained by his chair. "Your Majesty, 23,000 people are alive because of what these scars represent. 14 crew members died saving me after I saved them. Lieutenant Hana's father gave his life for mine. These wounds are not damage to be erased. They are memories to be honored." He touched the rough skin of his face. "Every morning, I look in the mirror and remember. I remember the choice I made. I remember the people who believed in me enough to disobey orders. I remember that survival is not given. It is earned. And I remember that no matter how bad things get, I can endure. I have the proof written on my body." Desara turned to face him. Her patterns had settled into a single color now. A bright, brilliant gold that seemed to glow from within. "Commander Park Do-hung," she said, and her voice was different now. Deeper, more formal. "I have ruled for 300 cycles. I have met warriors beyond counting. I have seen bravery and cowardice in every form." She walked toward him, her massive form casting shadows across the floor. "But I have never met anyone who used himself as a weapon to save strangers. I have never met anyone who carries his wounds openly as reminders of victory rather than defeat. I have never met anyone who earned their survival the way you have earned yours." She stopped directly in front of him, looking down at his scarred face. "I believe," she said slowly, "that I have gravely underestimated your species." Do-hung bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "Do not thank me yet, Commander. Tomorrow, the real work begins. And I suspect it will be much harder than anything we have faced so far. I am not afraid of hard work." Desara's patterns pulsed with that golden light. "No," she said. "I do not believe you are afraid of anything at all." The final negotiation session began like all the others. The Valari delegates filed into the great chamber with their usual slow dignity. High Counselor Vexis took his place at the head of the table, his pattern showing the confident greens and blues of someone who believed victory was already won. Commander Park Dawn sat across from them, his scarred face calm, his chrome hand resting on the table. Beside him, Lieutenant Hana kept her expression carefully neutral, though her eyes betrayed her worry. They had heard nothing from the Queen since yesterday. They did not know what the Tsar had decided. They did not know if Dohan's story had changed anything at all. Vexx clicked his mandibles together in that familiar gesture of contempt. "Commander," he said, "I trust you slept well. Today will be the last day of these negotiations. My colleagues and I have prepared our final recommendations for Her Majesty. I look forward to hearing them." Dohan replied, "I am sure you do." Vexis leaned back in his chair. "Though I suspect you already know what we will say. The Valari Dominion has no need for alliances with damaged species. Earth offers nothing that we cannot obtain elsewhere. Your presence here has been, shall we say, educational. We have learned much about human limitations." The other delegates made sounds of agreement. Their patterns showed amusement, satisfaction, triumph. Then the doors opened. Queen Desara entered the chamber. She was not alone. Behind her walked a formation of royal guards in their ceremonial armor, followed by scribes carrying recording devices. This was not a private visit. This was a formal appearance, the kind reserved for historic announcements. Every Valari in the room rose immediately and bowed. Dohan and Hana rose as well, showing the proper respect. The Tsar walked slowly to the center of the room. Her patterns were blazing with that brilliant gold color, so bright it almost hurt to look at. She stopped directly between the two negotiating parties and stood in silence. The entire chamber held its breath. "High Counselor Vexis," the Tsar said, her voice filling the room. "You and your colleagues have spent 5 days mocking our human guest. You have insulted his appearance. You have questioned his worth. You have made clear, in 100 small ways, your contempt for his species." Vexis's patterns flickered with uncertainty. "Your Majesty, we were simply silence." The word cut through the air like a blade. Vexis fell silent immediately. The Tsar turned to face the room, addressing everyone present. "You see this human's scars and think him broken. You see his metal hand and think him incomplete. You mock what you do not understand." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I have spoken with Commander Park Dawoon. I have heard the story of his wounds. And I am here to tell you what that story means." She walked toward Doan, her massive form casting shadows across the crystal floor. 12 years ago, this man commanded a single patrol ship against an enemy fleet of 17 warships. He had no chance of victory, no hope of survival. Any rational being would have fled. Any sensible creature would have accepted the inevitable. Her voice grew harder. Instead, he attacked. When his ship was destroyed, he crawled through the wreckage with half his face burned away. When he found his engines still worked, he did not use them to escape. He used his ship as a weapon. He crashed it into the enemy command vessel, killing their admiral and throwing their entire fleet into chaos. The Valari delegates were frozen in place, their patterns showing deep orange fear. 23,000 civilians survived because of his sacrifice. Farmers, teachers, children, people who had nothing to do with the war, who would have died if not for one man's refusal to surrender. The Zara stopped directly in front of Dawn. She looked down at his scarred face with something that might have been respect, or wonder, or both. And do you know what he did after? When he could have erased every scar, rebuilt his face, pretended the battle never happened. He kept his wounds. He carries them openly, every day, as proof of what he survived. As a reminder of what he chose to do, she turned to face Vexus. That, High Counselor, is what humans are. They break. They bleed. They scar. But they do not stop. They do not give up. They do not accept defeat, even when defeat is the only logical outcome. Her patterns pulsed with fierce gold light. And that is why the Valari Dominion would be honored to ally with Earth. The chamber exploded into chaos. Vexx stepped forward, his patterns flashing with desperate colors. Your Majesty, this is madness. We cannot ally with a species so primitive, so violent, so what, Counselor? Zara's voice was cold. So willing to die for strangers? So capable of enduring pain that would break any Valari? So stubborn that they refuse to accept defeat even when all logic says they should? She moved closer to Vexus, and for the first time, the High Counselor stepped back in fear. You have spent 300 cycles building a perfect empire. Vexus, clean, orderly, efficient. You molt when you are damaged and grow new shells. You have never had to learn what it means to carry weight. You have never had to discover what you are capable of when everything is taken from you. She pointed at Dohan. This man knows. His species knows. And that knowledge makes them more dangerous than any fleet of warships. More valuable than any trade agreement. More worthy of alliance than any perfect civilization that has never been tested. The chamber fell silent. The Sara turned to face Dohan fully. Then, slowly, deliberately, she extended one of her 4 hands toward him. Dohan recognized the gesture from his briefings. It was the highest form of Valari respect, reserved only for equals. No alien had ever received this honor before. He reached out with his chrome hand and took hers. Metal fingers met alien shell. 2 species touched across the vast gulf of different evolution, different history, different understanding. Commander Park Dohan, the Sara said formally, loud enough for everyone to hear. On behalf of the Valari Dominion, I accept Earth's proposed treaty. All terms. No changes. Behind them, Hana let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Vexus made one final attempt. Your Majesty, please reconsider. Counselor. The Sara did not even look at him. You are dismissed from your position. Effective immediately. Your replacement will be someone who can recognize strength when they see it, even when it does not look the way they expected. Vexus's patterns went pale white. Without another word, he turned and left the chamber, followed by the silent stares of every delegate. The Sara released Dohan's hand and addressed the room one final time. Let the record show that on this day, the Valari Dominion and the United Earth Coalition formed an alliance that will reshape this region of space. Let it also show that this alliance was forged because one human refused to be ashamed of his wounds. And one queen was wise enough to ask about them. She looked at Dohan. Her pattern shifted to something softer, more personal. Commander, she said quietly, for his ears alone. My people believe scars are weakness. You have shown me they can be proof of something else entirely. What is that, Your Majesty? Her patterns glowed with warm golden light. Victory. True victory. The kind that leaves marks on your soul as well as your body. 3 months later, when the Kethrani hegemony tested the new Earth-Valari border, they found not one fleet waiting for them but 2. Human ships flying in perfect formation alongside Valari warships. Their combined firepower enough to make even the aggressive Kethrani think twice. At the head of the human formation flew a command ship called the New Starling. Its captain was a man with a scarred face and a chrome hand. A man whose story had spread to every corner of the Valari Dominion. They called him the Unbroken. The Burned Commander. The human who would not die. But Dohan never cared about the names. He cared about the mission. He cared about the alliance. He cared about the future that was now possible, because two species had learned to see past appearances and recognize true strength. And beside him, on the bridge of the new Starling, stood Lieutenant Yunhana, who had become Commander Yunhana in the months since